Rude CEO mocks Waitress, then discovers she's a genius who saves his company. Your support absolutely lights up my world. Before we dive into today's heartwarming story, would you mind hitting subscribe? It helps me share more beautiful tales with our amazing community. Here's my favorite part. I personally respond to every comment because I genuinely love connecting with you. So tell me, where in the world are you watching from right now? I can't wait to hear from you. Now, let's begin this extraordinary journey together. The fluorescent light above Michael Langston's booth flickered like a dying heartbeat, casting intermittent shadows across the maze of legal documents sprawled before him. His Mont Blanc pen trembled between his fingers. Not from exhaustion, though that coursed through his veins like poison, but from a rage so pure it threatened to shatter his legendary composure. Indemnification protocols, fiduciary contingencies, escrow stipulations. The words writhed on the page like living things, mocking him. Here he was, Michael Langston, the man who had forged Langston Enterprises from nothing into a $2 billion tech empire, reduced to incomprehension by his own lawyer's handiwork. The merger with Synergy Solutions hung by a thread, and that thread was unraveling in his manicured hands. The diner around him hummed with midnight energy. Rosie's was a relic, untouched by the digital revolution he'd helped create. Chipped formica tables bore the scars of 1,000 meals, while the jukebox crooned Motown melodies that seemed to seep from the very walls. The air hung thick with the aroma of coffee grounds and caramelized onions, punctuated by the gentle clink of ceramic against ceramic. Grace Harper watched him from behind the counter, her movements fluid as she navigated between the coffee machine and the pie display. 3 years of this dance had taught her to read the subtle language of human distress, and the man in the $5,000 suit was practically screaming it. His shoulders carried tension like armor, his jaw worked silently over words he couldn't voice, and his eyes, piercing blue even in the diner's harsh lighting, held the desperate gleam of a predator cornered. Her sneakers squeaked against the linoleum as she approached, the sound somehow both apologetic and determined. She set down a glass of water with practiced grace, the ice cubes chiming softly against the glass. Rough night? The words emerged warm and unhurried, carrying none of the forced cheerfulness that so many in her position wielded like shields. Michael's response came without his eyes leaving the page. You could say that. Grace's gaze fell to the contract, its margins bleeding with angry red ink where his pen had slashed through incomprehensible clauses. Something stirred in her chest, not pity, but recognition. A law degree hiding under that apron, I don't think you'd get it. Grace tilted her head, studying him with the same careful attention she might give a complicated order during the morning rush. Try me. Michael's laugh emerged bitter and razor-edged. Oh, you're a genius now? Fine, if you're so smart, then translate it. He shoved the contract toward her with enough force to scatter several pages, expecting her to recoil, to mumble an apology and retreat to her safe domain behind the counter. Instead, Grace picked up the document with surprising reverence, her fingers tracing the edges as if she could absorb its secrets through touch alone. Michael leaned back in his booth, arms crossed, watching this performance with the detached amusement of someone witnessing a beautiful disaster in slow motion. He expected stumbling, expected the embarrassed admission of defeat that would restore the natural order of things. Genius in suits, service workers in their place. But Grace's brow furrowed with genuine concentration, her lips moving silently as she absorbed each clause. She pulled a small notepad from her apron pocket, her pen moving with surprising precision across its lined surface. The seconds stretched into minutes, the only sounds the distant murmur of other conversations and the steady rhythm of Grace's breathing. Okay, she said finally, her voice carrying a steadiness that made something cold shift in Michael's chest. This section here, indemnification protocols, it's about who takes the blame if things go south. She leaned forward slightly, and Michael caught the faint scent of vanilla and coffee that seemed to cling to her hair. Say you're buying a car and it breaks down the next day. This clause decides if you're stuck with the repair bill or if the seller has to cover it. Your contract says Synergy Solutions wants you to eat most of the risk if their tech fails post-merger. The words hit Michael like physical blows. His carefully constructed superiority cracked, letting in the first ray of something that might have been respect. "That's actually not wrong," he admitted, his voice grudging but no longer dismissive. "Go on." Grace flipped to another section, her movements now confident, purposeful. "This escrow stipulation, it's like putting money in a piggy bank that neither of you can touch until certain conditions are met. They're asking for $500 million in escrow, which is steep. It's their safety net, but it ties up your cash flow. You could negotiate that down or add a clause to release funds in phases." Michael found himself leaning forward despite every instinct screaming at him to maintain distance, to preserve the careful hierarchy that had served him so well. "How do you know this?" Grace's smile turned almost mischievous, transforming her face from merely pretty to genuinely radiant. "I listen. I read. People underestimate waitresses, but we hear everything. Business deals, breakups, you name it. Plus, I've got a thing for puzzles." The next hour passed in a blur of revelation. Grace dismantled the contract's complexity with surgical precision, not merely translating, but illuminating connections his expensive legal team had missed entirely. She spotted a clause buried deep in the appendices that could allow Synergy to withdraw from the deal without penalty if Langston's stock price dipped below a certain threshold, a financial time bomb ticking away unnoticed. "It's like signing a lease for an apartment, but leaving a loophole for the landlord to kick you out without notice," she explained, her analogies transforming abstract legalese into vivid, comprehensible reality. Michael's world tilted on its axis. This wasn't just intelligence, it was brilliance, raw and unpolished, but undeniable. He found himself studying Grace's face as she spoke, noting the way her eyes lit up when she untangled a particularly complex clause, the unconscious grace of her gestures as she sketched out potential solutions on her notepad. "Who are you?" The question escaped before he could stop it, half whispered like a prayer. Grace hesitated, her pen stilling on the paper. When she looked up, her expression had shifted, become more guarded. "Just someone who's good at figuring things out. You done mocking me yet?" The accusation hung between them, and Michael found he had no defense to offer. His silence stretched until it became answer enough. As midnight approached, the diner gradually emptied, leaving them in a bubble of artificial light surrounded by darkness. Michael pushed the contract aside, his curiosity now entirely focused on the woman across from him. "You're not just a waitress, are you?" Grace's laugh held no humor, only a weary recognition of life's cruel ironies. She moved to the counter, beginning the ritual of closing time cleanup, her movements economical and practiced. "I'm a lot of things. Waitress, sister, daughter. I was a computer science major for a while, but life had other plans." "Computer science?" Michael's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. "Why'd you quit?" "Didn't quit. Had to pause." Her voice remained matter-of-fact, but Michael caught the tremor beneath it, the carefully buried pain. "My mom got sick, and my brother was struggling. Someone had to pay the bills. I've been teaching myself since then. Coding mostly, keeps my brain busy." The admission hit Michael like a physical blow. Here was genius, raw and unrefined, sacrificing itself on the altar of family obligation. It was everything his privileged existence had never demanded of him. "Coding? Like what?" Grace hesitated, her fingers worrying the edge of her apron. Then, with the air of someone taking a leap of faith, she pulled out her phone. "I've been working on something. An app." Her fingers danced across the screen, and suddenly Michael was looking at an interface that made his breath catch in his throat. "It's rough, but it's mine." She opened a demo that showcased elegant simplicity, real-time communication that flowed seamlessly across platforms, integrating text, video, even encrypted data transfers with an intuitive grace that his R&D team had been failing to achieve for months. "This is good," he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Really good. Why haven't you pitched this to someone?" Grace's laugh was soft but edged with bitter understanding. "Who's going to take a waitress seriously? I don't have a degree or a fancy resume. Just code I write at 2 a.m. after my shifts." Michael's mind raced, synapses firing with the recognition of opportunity. Langston Enterprises was hemorrhaging market share to competitors with superior communication technology. Grace's app could be revolutionary, But more than that, her ability to think, to innovate, to see through complexity with crystalline clarity represented something his polished executives fundamentally lacked. He had built his empire on recognizing talent, but he had nearly missed the most brilliant mind he'd encountered in years because of his own prejudices. "You're wrong," he said finally, his voice carrying a conviction that surprised them both. "Someone would take you seriously. I would." Grace raised an eyebrow, skepticism written in every line of her posture. "You? The guy who called me sweetheart and told me to stick to coffee?" Michael winced, the words hitting their target with uncomfortable precision. "Fair point. I was an ass, but I'm not stupid. You've got something special, Grace. Let me help you build it. Resources, funding, a team, you name it." She studied him with those impossible green eyes, and Michael felt himself being weighed, measured, judged by standards he wasn't sure he could meet. "Why should I trust you? You don't even know me." "Because I know talent when I see it," he replied, his voice earnest for perhaps the first time in years. "And because you just saved my deal. Let me return the favor." The days that followed blurred together in Michael's memory. He finalized the synergy merger using Grace's insights, negotiating terms that saved his company millions. But his thoughts kept circling back to the woman in the diner, to her app, her story, her unrealized potential. When he returned to Rosie's a week later, it wasn't with a contract but with a proposal, a partnership to develop her app under Langston's umbrella, with Grace as lead developer. Grace listened with the same careful attention she had given his legal documents, weighing every word. When she finally agreed, it came with conditions that would have seemed audacious from anyone else. She would keep her job at Rosie's until the app launched, and she wanted creative control over its development. Michael, unaccustomed to being challenged, found himself respecting her more for the demands. As they worked together over the following months, Michael discovered a world he had never known existed. Grace's life unfolded before him in fragments. Late-night coding sessions fueled by instant coffee and determination, the weight of financial responsibility that never lifted from her shoulders, dreams deferred but never abandoned. She introduced him to her family, her mother, fragile but fierce, recovering from an illness that had drained their savings, her younger brother, brilliant and uncertain, carrying dreams too big for their small apartment. Michael, who had long viewed success as a solitary climb, began to understand the strength that came from community, from resilience born of necessity. The app they created together, christened ConnectSphere, launched 6 months later to critical acclaim. But it was more than just a product. It became a lifeline, revolutionizing communication for businesses and individuals alike. Grace blossomed in the spotlight of success, but she never forgot where she came from. She established a scholarship fund for working-class students, ensuring that others like her could finish what circumstances had forced them to pause. Michael, too, was transformed. He overhauled Langston's hiring practices, seeking talent in community colleges, small towns, and yes, even diners. The lesson Grace had taught him became his guiding principle. Brilliance didn't need a pedigree, it just needed a chance. A year later, Michael found himself back in Rosie's, but everything had changed. The booth that had once witnessed his humiliation now hosted celebration. Grace sat across from him, no longer a waitress, but a guest of honor, toasting ConnectSphere's latest milestone. The diner buzzed with energy, filled with people who had come to understand what Michael had learned that night. Genius wore many faces, and wisdom could emerge from the most unexpected places. Michael raised his coffee mug, a wry smile playing at his lips, to underestimating people. Grace clinked her mug against his, her eyes dancing with mischief and triumph, to proving them wrong. Outside, the city hummed with midnight energy, unaware that a quiet revolution had been born in this humble diner. But inside Rosie's, surrounded by the aroma of coffee and the gentle glow of neon signs, two people who had discovered each other across the vast divide of circumstance shared a moment of perfect understanding. The world was bigger and brighter than any boardroom could contain, and sometimes the most profound transformations began with nothing more than the courage to really see another human being.